Hello, and welcome to The More You NoCo, a podcast about the people and ideas of Northern Colorado. I'm your host, Ivan Wayne. Let's go! All right, very first podcast episode I have ever recorded. If you can tell that I'm a bit nervous in this one, or my skills aren't fully developed, I apologize. First one right out of the gate. Who is it? This was Danielle Bock. She is the Director of Nutrition Services for Greeley Schools. One thing I want to apologize is we didn't realize it, but we were tapping the table a lot during our conversation, and I hope that doesn't bother you too much. It was a good first run, and I hope you like it. All right, welcome. I am here with Danielle Bock, the Nutrition Services Director for Weld County School District 6.
It's a mouthful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. So,
Thank you.
I was doing some Google searches about you to see what I could find. I originally found out about you and learned about you from the Greeley Unexpected website campaign, and they covered the nutrition program. But I saw that you were originally from Denver. Mm-hmm. You moved away from Colorado, and now you're back. Do you mind walking us through some of that?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Denver. I graduated from South High School, Denver South. Go Rebels. And then I moved away and went to college in Boulder. After 4 years in Boulder, I decided that I needed to experience something other than Colorado. I believe I was a sophomore in high school the year that Amendment 2 was passed. And if you're over the age of 35 and you live in Colorado, you remember that Amendment 2 was the first state legislation that allowed an organization to fire an individual based on their sexual orientation. And so as a 16-year-old, I hadn't yet come out. I hadn't yet known that I was going to come out. I hadn't identified that I had any sexual orientation that was not mainstream, but it just didn't seem right that somebody should be fired because of who they love. And so that really, that was what spurred me to look for new places to live. So after I finished my 4-year degree, which is in English literature, at CU, I knew I could go anywhere because a degree in English lit is, basically like a cook's license. So I knew I could continue to cook anywhere. So I ended up in Seattle in the fall of 1999, and I stayed for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
It was, it's a beautiful place to live. I love it. It was a great community. I definitely found a new family there that was very important to me throughout the entirety of my 20s and 30s. It helped me come to terms with the religion that I grew up with and the sexuality that I would come to claim as my own. And then, of all things, I fell in love with someone. And when I asked about her, not to her because I was sheepish, my friend, our mutual friend, told me that she lived in Larimer County, and I immediately Google searched, please let there be a Larimer County other than Larimer County, Colorado, because I had left during a time when I think that Colorado was really going through some interesting growing pains. My senior year of college was the year that Matthew Shepard was killed just over the border. Yeah. And that had a pretty significant impact on me. I definitely wanted to get away from this place.
And that was in Wyoming, or?
That was in Wyoming. It was in Larimer County, Laramie, Wyoming. Okay. But it was in Larimer County, and it was specifically in Fort Collins, which is where I live now, that there was a fraternity that they got in some trouble during homecoming. It was a big story back then. So this was October of 1998, fall of 98. The fraternity had made some really ugly references to Matthew Shepard on their homecoming float. And there was action taken. The students were expelled and the fraternity was disbanded. But Matthew Shepard was lying over in PVH, dying at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I had a really bad impression of Fort Collins. I had never lived there. I had, gone to see friends on campus, but I had just really not ever had a good relationship or experience in Fort Collins. So I came to find out that this person that I was falling in love with lives in Fort Collins. And so it took me a little while to be convinced to come back. But I came back, and it's a different place. It's not the place that it was in the late 90s.
How did you begin rectifying this slow decision to give Fort Collins a chance?
My partner and I have a daughter who's now 13. At the time, she was 6. And I would come out to visit. It was easier for me to come out and visit them from Seattle than them to come out to Seattle to see me. So I would come back to Colorado probably at least once every 6 weeks for a long weekend. First thing, I'd step off that airplane and the air, that Colorado air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's my home.
Right.
That's how I grew up. That's how I spent the first 23 years of my life. And so that air would hit me, and I was like, oh, man, this sure smells like home. But it's not. And then just slowly, weekend after weekend, event after event that I got to experience in northern Colorado, I just really began to get the sense that I was welcome. And I had already determined in my mind that I wasn't welcome based on the experiences that I had in my early 20s as a college student.
Right.
And so I let myself have an open mind, and I looked around in Fort Collins, in Greeley, in Loveland, and there were people that were awesome, that were exceptional. And I started to make friends. And so I just allowed myself to entertain the possibility that maybe it wasn't what I thought it was, and to sort of break down that story I've been telling myself.
So if you met what was your partner's name?
Amy.
Amy, okay. If you met Amy living in Larimer County, living in Fort Collins, and you were in Seattle, how did you wind up meeting her?
So part of my path to getting to Nutrition Services Director included me as the Director of Operations for the food bank in Seattle, Washington. It's called Food Lifeline. And I spent 5 years as a Director of Operations. We served 750,000 people in need, hungry people, in 31 counties of western Washington. Amy is the Executive Director of the Food Bank for Larimer County. And so we met at a food bank conference. We actually met in Austin, Texas. And I had met her at the conference, and I asked a coworker of mine, hey, who was that that just walked by? And she said, oh, that's Amy. She's the director in Larimer County, Colorado. As it turns out, there's not, by the way, if you're wondering, there's not another Larimer County in the United States.
Okay, yeah,
I checked.
You found that out.
I found that out. Yeah, so we met. We started communicating professionally. I had been a part of a software platform that was launched nationally to try to help nonprofits communicate better and to have a functioning database that they could pull information from. My food bank was the first to go live on that system. Amy's was the fourth to go live on that system. So we ended up in similar circumstances a lot. And then we were also both chosen to be on a task force that was examining the food safety regulations and laws that come out of the USDA and the FDA. So we just kept ending up in the same boardroom, time after time after time.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, we both had huge crushes on each other, and here we are 7.5 years later, and here I am, back in northern Colorado.
Back in northern Colorado.
Yep.
You are probably the first instance of I've ever heard of someone meeting at a food bank convention. I didn't even know those things existed.
If you have the opportunity to travel for work, Lord only knows what's going to happen to you.
Right.
The opportunities.
So 14 years in Seattle. What was a highlight there that you enjoyed that maybe northern Colorado doesn't have?
For sure, it has to be women's professional sports. I love sports. I'm a sports nut. Coming home to Colorado, I was afforded the opportunity to take back my Bronco season tickets. So my mom and I now go to Bronco games together like we did since the 3rd grade. But when I was in Seattle, I had season tickets to the Seattle Storm. Most people have never heard of them. It's the WNBA professional team. As a girl that played sports when I was young, I could never figure out why $1 million contracts were given to men playing sports when women were just as good. And so I think that the WNBA team, and then also there is also the Seattle Reign, which is a professional soccer team, and quite honestly, roller derby. We were doing it early on, the Rat City Roller Girls. I was one of the first season ticket holders for that as well. I have this strong, I don't even know if I call it feminist anymore. It's just a matter of wanting the same opportunity for young girls that everyone else has.
Yep.
And Seattle did that better than the places that I've lived in Colorado. There's definitely a more progressive community on the coasts of this country.
Right.
And Seattle in particular, when it came to career opportunities in tech and career opportunities for young girls, there were less boundaries and less fences put up, I think, than there are in more the closer you get to the middle of the country, I'll say.
Right, yeah, not the coast. Does Colorado have a WNBA team?
It doesn't. I would have season tickets if it did.
Right.
I've had to settle. I'm sorry for anybody I offend. I've had to settle for the Eagles, so I've had hockey tickets now for the last couple of years. Different crowd in Loveland than say at a WNBA game in Seattle, Washington.
Right.
Very different crowd. In fact, I call those polar opposites. I would love to have a WNBA team again. Right. I do go to UNC girls games. I go to CSU girls games. Occasionally, I'll go down to Boulder for a CU game, but very different levels of competition.
Right, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah, so it's not quite sports, but I'm a huge WWE fan.
Okay,
huge pro wrestling fan.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
With a determined outcome before they walk out.
Right.
Anyway, what you said about the contracts, the amount of the contracts, and even the opportunities to women, it is not the same. I remember the first time I looked at the salaries, because for some reason in WWE they're usually open access. You can see what WWE wrestlers make. The headlining men would make up to 10 times as much, and that's not an exaggeration. Literally $600,000 for the top performing female, and up to $6-7 million for the top performing male, and that is just, they're doing the same work. They're on the same charter buses. They're going to all the same events, and it really bothered me. Yeah, and that's what you reminded me of.
Yeah, it's still happening. I mean, I think that the U.S. Women's World Cup soccer team a couple of years ago made a really important stand when they wouldn't play on turf because of the injuries, and they brought some of this disparity to light, but nothing has yet been done about it. It still exists. Right. When you compare the salary cap contracts for NBA players versus WNBA players, it's a lot more than 10 times.
Dang.
A lot.
I'm not a big basketball fan.
Yeah.
So
I can't even tell you
so
anymore what somebody like LeBron James makes because I can't think in those terms. I can tell you that your average WNBA player makes less than $200,000 a year.
Wow.
I know people that make more than professional basketball players who are women.
Right.
Like, I know, like, just regular people in my life, they're CEOs of companies, make more than professional women's basketball players.
Right.
So that's what I think that's the thing I miss the most.
Right.
Otherwise, I feel like I've been able to find the other things that I had there.
Everything.
Yeah. Except for the water. I miss the water.
The water?
Yeah.
Wait, like the ocean?
Like the sound.
Oh, okay.
The boats.
But it's too cold to swim up there.
Yeah, you need a really thick wetsuit to go surfing there.
Yeah, I went to the ocean one time on the beach, northern Oregon somewhere. Yeah. And I was a kid, maybe 8, 10, but I was surprised because growing up, I'm from Oklahoma. Okay. So, we don't know what beaches are, except for that Garth Brooks song, Beaches of Cheyenne. But that's not even really a beach. But I was so shocked at how cold it was, and it was June.
Yeah,
and I couldn't
it's always
swim.
like that.
I didn't have a wetsuit.
Yeah, it's always like that.
So,
but it's pretty to look at, and it's nice to paddle a boat around.
Right. Is it as cloudy up there in Seattle as everyone says it is?
How many people are going to listen to this? I don't want to let out the big secret. No, it's not. That's what everybody says to me. Oh, how did you last 14 years? It is truly beautiful. It is a beautiful place. Washington State is nicknamed the Evergreen State. And Seattle nicknamed the Emerald City because everything's green all the time. Right. There's never brown.
I've heard that.
So I do come February here in northern Colorado, I start to get a little burnt out on shades of brown and gray.
Yeah.
But we have the beautiful blue sky, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of sunshine. Yeah, I was reading one time that there are belts of the Northwest that get as much, if not a little bit more sunshine than Colorado does.
Yeah, the banana belts.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, there's a banana belt that runs through the San Juan Island It's archipelago. Is that the term that you for a string of islands in the Sound?
I'm not sure.
Anywho, the banana belt runs through them, and they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
The clouds move really quickly. That's the difference.
Blowing in from the ocean, I guess, traveling east.
Yeah, they just come in. So it might be cloudy, but 15 minutes later it's done.
That's what I noticed here. Moving from Oklahoma, when we would get snow, it would usually be ice. Yeah. And I remember my first winter, I was just shocked that it would snow at, 10 or 11 in the morning, living here in Greeley. And then by 3 or 4, it'd be sunny.
Yeah.
And it was like the perfect mix.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It is.
Because it's dry powder instead of icy.
Yeah.
My first year here in Greeley, I was actually a school bus driver. Oh, and when I...
job I don't ever think I'll do.
Right. I didn't either. But I found myself there. And when the first snowstorm came, I was so afraid to drive because I thought it'd be ice sheets everywhere on the streets like it was back in Tulsa, but it was not the case.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk a lot about your position in the Nutrition Services Director.
Okay.
Having a background in education, I'm really interested. But first I want to ask you about a video that popped up when I Googled your name. It is called Legos and Bathroom Bills. And I have to admit, before I watched the video, I kind of thought, I want to see how this connects to nutrition. Because I was so confused about bathroom bills, Legos, and it was it looked like some sort of local TED Talk. Is that kind of what it is? Do you mind?
It's. I think that's a lot. A lot of people describe it that way. It's a little more storytelling and a little less educational lecture hall. So, but yeah, it's a local Greeley event. I think that when I was in it last November, I think that was year 3 or year 4.
Okay.
So it's happened it's annual. It's happened a few times in a row now.
Where do they hold it?
At the UCCC.
Okay. Yeah, on campus.
It was in the
downtown,
the Civic Center. It was in Fred Phelps. Not Fred Phelps. He's the head of the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, we're just going to skip over that one.
Phelps Auditorium. That's what it is.
Okay.
That's the one.
Hopefully not the Fred Phelps.
No, not the Fred Phelps. I wouldn't have gone.
I was surprised. Anyway.
Yeah. So
I see this video.
Yeah.
And not about nutrition.
Nope.
But I really enjoyed the video. Do you mind giving kind of a summary or an overview of this video?
Sure.
So our listeners can go check it out on their own if they'd like.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. If you Google me, I think it pops up now. So
it was like the top hit.
Yeah. So I'll tie it back a little bit to my job. When I first was promoted to the Director of Nutrition Services, it's been about 1.5 years now, I decided it would really benefit from some professional coaching. I have been assistant director roles a couple of times, but I had yet to be in that position of making all of the big, important decisions. So I sought out a professional coach, and my coach is really invested in the community in Greeley. She knows everyone. And along the way, she is a part of the creative district. I think that she was on one of the original boards for putting Greeley in the creative district. And so she brought it to my attention, and she said, there's this thing called Do Tell, and it's a story night. And I think you should tell your story. And I think I wrote back to her and said, what story do you think I should tell? And she said, you should just tell your story. And I had absolutely no idea what my story was, to be totally honest.
Right.
She just thought that I would be good at this storytelling event and that it would be an important story to tell. And so I just sat down and did a lot of soul searching on what it was that I would say if I had the opportunity to stand in front of a room full of people for 10 minutes about who I am. And when I sat down and I thought about all of the different parts of me that go into the person that I am, the thing that was most relevant to me, I think, is the issue of gender inequality. And I guess I already kind of talked about that in women's sporting events, but how we create and perceive gender. It's really important to me. It impacts me every single day. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought there isn't enough representation. in popular culture, and I'm not talking about Ellen DeGeneres and Will and Grace, the sort of iconic gay shows that I grew up on.
Right.
I'm talking about the opportunity to express gender in whatever way is most comfortable to you, and I'm going into my 43rd year of life, and so I think that there is an entire generation coming in behind me who perceives gender differently. And for me, it's been a journey to get there. So Legos and Bathroom Bills is very specifically about my journey to get to a place where I was confident just being who I am. And that that every single day, it's just a new discovery. Some days it works out really well, and some days I still go home crying. My gender is non-traditional gender. I don't necessarily feel like I was born in the wrong body. I think that defines transgendered individuals who maybe are born female but spend their whole lives feeling male. I went through a period of time where I thought that was what I was supposed to do. But the more I soul searched, the more I realized I don't feel like a man. I also don't feel like a woman that is often comfortable in the roles assigned to women. And so I reject a lot of those traditional gender roles that are assigned to women. I definitely reject a lot of social construct. I can't stand having my hair long. It's just too much of a pain to deal with. I don't have time and patience for things like makeup. I don't love shopping. I don't. If I can get my clothes on the internet, I'm going to get my clothes on the internet. And so just those sort of very in your face, the things that you see every single day that define gender, that's what Legos and Bathroom Bills is about. My experience reflecting back on that. And the closer we got to that day where I had to get up on that stage and actually, perform this story or tell this story, the more comfortable I got. I think that people have asked me, was that hard to do? And it was hard to find the story inside myself, to figure out what I wanted to say about it. But after I found the story, it wasn't hard at all. I got up there and I was like, oh, this seems right to me, because there's at least one kid in this district right now who has absolutely no idea how to start to be the person that they are on the inside, because gender has been prescribed for them. And that's why I did it. I really did it because I hope to, if not be a role model, then at least be visually available to students in our district that don't prescribe to traditional binary genders.
Right. What would you say would be, like, in addition to that? Well, so correct me if I'm wrong. I kind of pulled away two takeaways towards the end of the video. One was that you wanted to empower students who may not fit into the gender binary in the district. You wanted to give them a piece of bravery. I heard that. Yeah. And it seemed to resonate. Is that
true?
Accurate?
That's what got me up on that stage, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was the piece about the bathroom bills. You shared a couple of your experiences with going into a women's restroom and a men's restroom, and some of those stories were very surprising to me, maybe ignorantly. But you, oh, what were you going to say?
I when I was practicing the story, I had a few individuals that were prescribed for just coaching for the story. And I got to be honest, every individual that I told that story to, or that I have shared those stories with over the years, are always really shocked. And again, I think that was one of the other reasons why I wanted to do it. Not only to make, and I'll be honest, it makes my bathroom experience in the district more comfortable because people have seen it. And so now they know who I am. Right. And so I don't have to face that wonder, that judgment. Really is what I'm trying to avoid. Kids don't give that to you. On a whole, kids don't give that to you until they've been taught that boys look like you and girls don't look like me. So a piece of that was just to share that experience, because I think there are a lot of us that have that experience. And by a lot of us, I mean anyone who doesn't fall comfortably into prescribed gender roles and the way that people should look when they're male or female. A public bathroom is an insanely traumatic place to go. I think probably one of the reasons that I don't love shopping is because I don't want to use dressing rooms. So it helps to share that experience, because so many people are struck that they never would have even imagined that.
Right. And then, so Another part of the video that I thought I took away was that you maybe started an informal initiative from that video that you want a gender-neutral bathroom in all the schools in the district. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to keep pushing on that. I don't get very far with it.
Do you know any data, or do you know
None.
any?
Well, yeah, I do know data. I know that. So I will simply say that the one new building that the district has this year, it's not new. It's Meeker. Meeker Elementary School is being rebuilt after the devastating flood last fall. We don't have the space in that building to create a gender-neutral bathroom. What I learned through my own experience of trying to find that data out, what do you have to do to get a gender-neutral bathroom? What I learned is that due to our building codes in the state of Colorado, and this is a state building code, all counties have different building codes, but they all prescribe to the same state building code. You have to have a prescribed men's room and a prescribed women's room before you can offer a third bathroom. And if you don't have the facilities for that, you just simply can't do it.
Why?
So when you go to a bar, this happens to me all the time. I love it. I've actually started an Instagram. I take photos of bars that have signs up on their bathroom doors that say either or whatever. There's a great restroom sign that has half man, half woman, with the skirt. The dude's got the straight legs and then it's got the little stick figure skirt.
Yeah.
And underneath it says whatever. There are all of these fabulous gender-neutral bathroom signs, and I see a lot of them in Greeley and Fort Collins. The people who put those up are breaking building code. They have their inspection, and then they take the signs down and they put the new ones up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why? I just don't get why that's a bathroom code. There has to be male and female before gender-neutral. It just seems...
My own opinion of that is it's a real antiquated idea of privacy and gender roles. And so when I didn't talk at length about bathroom bills, mostly because when I get onto the subject of legislation, which is my other passion, I get a little preachy and everybody tells me that I get on a soapbox. So I didn't go deep into this, but we saw nationally when those bathroom bills started popping up, and obviously North Carolina was the most dominant one in the media, the reaction from parents is so strong. The idea that my 13-year-old daughter, who is starting 8th grade next week, would be in a locker room changing her clothes with another 13-year-old child that was born male. That idea freaks people out. It doesn't freak me out because having lived in a world where gender is constantly prescribed to me, I know that no one would put themselves through this just to play a practical joke.
Right.
When I hear parents in the media saying, we can't let these predators into our kids' locker rooms, I think to myself, what 13-year-old do you know that would change their gender publicly just to see girls naked? You can get that on the internet. That is, transgendered individuals are constantly victimized by the idea that people who don't fit into our stereotypes are predators somehow, and they're not. It's just, to me, it's ludicrous to think that a child would put themselves through the marginalization that they're going to experience in their lives to make that change, just so they can sneak into a locker room. They're the ones that are hiding in the stall changing because they don't want anybody to see them.
Right.
So I think that that's what drives it. The idea that I would walk in on you standing at a urinal, or that you would walk in to a women's bathroom. I don't know what you're going to see, because I got to tell you, women's bathrooms are all stalls. We don't have any freestanding devices like you do in men's rooms.
Right.
So that's...
Yeah. It may seem off topic, but I promise
that's okay.
It connects.
I don't mind. Trust me.
The first time I seriously considered a bathroom that was everyone, male, female, transgender, anyone, was actually the first time I watched through the show Battlestar Galactica. Have you ever heard of it?
The new one or the old one?
The new one.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Both.
Excellent
I know
show.
both of them, but yes, the new one.
Out.
Yeah, love it.
BSG. You got to watch it.
Yeah. All 7 seasons.
Right. The first couple of seasons are rough to get through.
Yeah.
But my God,
it
the
works.
end.
It works out.
But through the whole show, it is never said It is never mentioned. They're just from episode 1. Every person on the ship, regardless of what their gender is, they use the same bathroom.
Yep.
And it just works out so normally. And the whole time I was watching the show, it's a space sci-fi, but I was just thinking, like, this is practical. Who divided us way back when? It's not like people go into bathrooms, and it's not like that's the Tinder or the Bumble space. Like, no one goes into the bathroom. No, most of the things happening in a restroom would be something you would keep from a significant other for at least a year or two. I mean,
if not longer.
I don't see the instant uproar and offense that people would take at a gender-neutral restroom. And it's not like we're advocating taking away male and female restrooms. Parents, their children can still use those. Maybe what is all you're asking is another option. It's not subtracting anything. It's just adding another. And
a choice.
Right.
Yeah. That isn't marred with all of the judgment and honestly personal anxiety when you have to make that choice. And so for me, the personal anxiety, and I still feel it every single day, comes more from anything that someone I know will be coming out as I'm going in. And if I make that choice so for me, because everyone I know knows that I identify as a woman, if I'm using the men's room, because it feels more comfortable in that scenario, wherever that is, which is oftentimes a lot of restaurants in Greeley, I'm going to be honest. Especially if I'm out during the evening. During the day, I probably tend not to care. But if I'm going to go use the men's room, say at the theater or at a restaurant, and there's a man that I know coming out of it as I'm going into it, it's one of my biggest fears. Because they're going to look at me like, what are you doing in here? But it has happened, and it continues to happen. And the more I talk about this, and the reason I did the Do Tell storytelling is because the more people start to understand that they didn't know this was going on in our world because it's not a part of their lives, the easier that gets for everybody. Yeah.
Sometimes, actually all the time, people don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And sometimes maybe your video would be the first exposure for someone to consider such a thing.
Yeah, I think it was for a lot of people in Greeley. I've had a lot of interactions with people that saw it, that were either there or have seen it on the internet and said, "Wow, I never thought of that."
Really? So the reactions were positive.
Yeah. I've not yet had one bad reaction. On wood. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we move away from that, Legos and Bathroom Bills, Danielle Bock. Search it up. It's only 15 minutes. It was an amazing view. I'm glad I watched it before talking to you today. So, your position, Nutrition Services Director here at Weld County School District 6 in Greeley. What is your day-to-day? What do you do?
You're asking me this 3 days before school starts.
Right.
It's like, we should have done this first thing in the morning, not last thing in the afternoon. Day-to-day, my job is just to make sure that the kids in our district get fed. And so that's probably oversimplifying it a little bit. I have a staff of around 200, give or take, on any given day. Oh, wow. And we will give and take them on every given day. We've a little bit of turnover. We operate the school lunch program in 38 schools in Greeley and Evans. So in addition to all of the district schools, we also operate all of the charter schools, as well as St. Mary Academy. We also serve lunch there. We are offering every reimbursable nutrition program that is available for children in the United States. So we operate as a USDA funded program. So it's a little bit different than the rest of education. One of the things that I like to educate people on is that nutrition services operate as if we were a nonprofit inside the school district.
Okay.
So we don't receive any funds from the general fund. We aren't funded through your property taxes as teachers and custodians and bus drivers are.
Right.
We pay for the food and we pay for our staff based on the revenue that we bring in, whether that's a student paying for a meal or USDA reimbursing us for a meal served to a student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So really, my job is to make sure that whole orchestration is pulled off on a daily basis. We're serving somewhere around 9,500 lunches daily and 6,000 breakfasts daily. And then we also serve afternoon snack programs, fresh fruit and vegetable program, and a supper program that we just launched last year at 4 of our sites. So it's a big job. It's a little daunting, especially as we're heading into a new school year. I've been with the district and the department now. This will be my 5th school year. I was the operations coordinator under Jeremy West, our previous director, and I have yet to start a new school year without opening new buildings. This year it's Meeker and Union Colony Prep, their new building. Last year we had Fred Chartis and Westridge Academy opening. So I'm really looking forward to a new school year where I don't have to open a new building at the exact same time.
Right.
It makes it a little easier. But really, it's just about getting healthy, nutritious options in front of a population of students that is probably more deserving than any other population I can name. The kids in this school district have a lot of opportunity ahead of them and not a whole lot of resources to take advantage of.
Explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can.
What do you mean?
For anyone who's not familiar with the National School Lunch Program, it's funded through the USDA. The money is entitlement from the Farm Bill, which, cross fingers, we're renewing this fall. The way that it works is that if a family is living at or below 185% of poverty. So just for people who aren't familiar with that, that means a family of 4 living on about $41,000 for 4 people in northern Colorado. If anybody in northern Colorado tries to find an apartment and live on that, I'd like to know where they're going.
Right, yeah.
So family of 4, $41,000 or less, and more often than not, it's less, would qualify for a free or reduced priced school breakfast and school lunch.
So
that's the basis of it. So if you and your family are not living at 185% or below of the national poverty rate, Nutrition Services is there to sell you a lunch. So just like I grew up being able to go to the school cafeteria and buy hot lunch if I wanted it, or bring my brown bag lunch in.
I did the same.
So in Greeley Evans School District 6, 67% of the 23,000 students enrolled in our district qualify for free and reduced lunch. So 23% of the students that we're serving have the opportunity to purchase lunch from us or are bringing their lunch from home. The other 67% essentially don't have access or resources, A, to meals at all, B, to healthy, nutritious meals. So really my goal is to provide the best quality food that these kids can have. And I do this because I feel like food is it's a basic human right. Good food is a basic human right. I came of age during the boon of Wild Oats and Whole Foods. And, I think lovingly people still joke about Whole Foods being whole paycheck.
Right.
It's quality, nutritious food, especially fresh food, in the ninth largest agricultural county in the country. Fresh, healthy food shouldn't be a privilege. It shouldn't be something that you have to spend a paycheck on.
It should be overflowing.
It should be overflowing. It should absolutely. Weld County is the 9th richest agricultural county in the entire country.
Wow. I did not know that.
I believe that the other 8 that come before it are all California, except I think maybe one of them is in Texas.
Dang.
So we have an abundance of riches in this county, and we should, my opinion is we should be sharing that throughout the entirety of the state.
Right.
But certainly here at home in Greeley, we should be doing that. So that's what we do. We put out fresh salad bars in every single one of our kitchens every day, and that's unlimited salad bar. Students can come through and eat as much of that as they can fit inside their little bodies.
Right.
In addition to that, 85% of the entrees that we're serving for lunch in our district are cooked right here in this building, all from scratch. And we source as much of that raw base ingredient locally as we can. So all of our proteins, our beef, our chicken, all of our beans are all coming from local farms right around this area, so that we have less of a carbon footprint as well as the freshest possible product.
Right.
Food tastes better when it's fresh.
Yeah. How do you establish those connections? How do you reach out to local agriculture?
It takes a lot of years of persistence, I'll be honest. I think that we are in our 10th year of farm to school in this district. We were one of the premier farm to school districts 10 years ago when the USDA started offering grant money for those programs. And it's taken 10 years of persistence, and it still takes persistence. We have farmers who love having the opportunity to serve their local community. Mm-hmm. And we have farmers who do it for a couple of years and then decide it's just easier to sell their entire crop to a local distributor, to go to Walmart or Kroger.
Right.
And so we come up against that. Every single year we'll have farmers who drop out of the program because it's just too much work. It takes extra work. It takes extra work on our part. We have an entire, a full-time employee who works year-round on trying to establish and create those relationships, as well as put out a bid for those local products.
Right.
One of the restrictions that we work under is because we are spending federal money, we have to be fair and transparent on all of our purchasing. So anything you wanted to know about my purchasing, I would provide to you. That can complicate buying produce from a local farmer because they may not be transparent about their pricing. Something that I think we as consumers don't necessarily realize is that a farmer may be selling a product to a local distributor that's going to go into our Kroger stores or into our Walmart stores, and they'll sell the exact same product in the row right next to it at a farmer's market for 3 times as much.
Right.
So how are they fair and transparent about their pricing to us if they're doing that already? So it takes some education of the farmers, as well as some investment in food safety. A lot of the local smaller farmers don't have the infrastructure for washing and prep that we would prefer that they have to make sure the product gets here safely.
Oh, I see.
So we're still building the program. We still, every single year, we invest a little more time and a little more energy into that.
So most of the farmers that work with you all locally are bigger productions because they have the facilities, the time, the distribution to wash it, prep it, and get it ready for you all beforehand?
Not necessarily. So we do have some of those who have built that infrastructure over the years of participating. We also have some that are real small and don't have that infrastructure. And so we've installed some infrastructure here. Very specifically, we've installed some specialized sinks that wash produce for us.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to a person standing over that sink washing produce all day long.
Right.
These sinks essentially agitate produce so it comes out clean. In addition, I think there's a lot of single product farmers that we source from. So when you look at some of the larger operations in northern Colorado that go to farmers markets and sell you 14 different types of produce, we don't see as much opportunity with them as we do identifying a farmer who just does one product and getting that 1 or 2 products from them all year long.
Yeah.
So we have been able to establish relationships with a few hot houses that do cucumbers and peppers and cherry tomatoes for us, and they're able to provide them year-round or close to year-round because of their growing operations.
It's a fascinating thing to consider and think about, that there's so much food being made right here in this county, and yet 99% of it is shipped to either grocery stores here, but a lot of it just disappears. It goes to the other states, and I hadn't really considered that much, and it's an interesting thought.
One of the largest producers of carrots in the country is right here in this county, and it pains me when I see their product come back to me on a U.S. Foods truck.
Right.
That I've paid the distributor for the product that I could have just paid the farmer for.
Right.
But over the years, we've tried to establish that relationship. And again, that farm has a good system in place. It's a family-owned farm, and they make a living doing what they love doing because they have that established relationship with the distributor. And to reserve these couple of rows or this truckload of product just for us creates an additional burden for them. So I understand why they don't do it. It just pains me when I see their name come off the distributor's truck on a bag of carrots.
Right.
We use a lot of carrots.
I can't shake this feeling of community that if I were a farmer, I would want, even if it were 10% more difficult, I feel like I'd want to source some of my products to people in the community, people that I may run into, that I go to the theater in town and I might happen to walk past kids who got to have a good, healthy lunch at school because I worked very hard to produce that crop. I'm glad there are people that are willing to work, and I hope it becomes more.
I hope so too. I hope we continue to see. I think as new generations of farmers are taking over, the sense of pride is a really important factor in deciding where they're going to sell their product.
Yeah.
And from our part, we are willing to pay a premium to those smaller family farms because of that, because we want to showcase our local community.
Okay.
There are products that we bring in straight from the farmer that I could get for a lot less if I went for a conventional product that came from California or Texas.
Right.
But we choose to make that investment in our community.
Have you been to the farmers market here in Greeley?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you been there this summer?
Yes, I have.
So I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Shameless plug for Greeley's farmers market. It was smaller than I expected, but the quality is there. And what I couldn't help but notice, I rode my bike there, took some bags. It was kind of heavy to lug back on a bike, but worth it. There's something about bringing home bags of food from people that you talk to, that you know live close to you, and that, like you said, this like telephone game of sending a message through 10 different people just to get to you, that's not there. And to be able to go to an area where a lot of people who live and work right around you in the same community, buying stuff from them and getting to put that on the dinner table is there's some value there. And you mentioned a price premium. I have noticed that you have to be willing to pay a little bit of a premium at a farmer's market, and I'm of the opinion that it's worth it because I don't know, I like that community connection that you walk away from a farmer's market with.
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
it be vegetables or meat, or there's this really cool bee stand there that makes all these bee products. I'm hoping to have her on the podcast.
Cool.
But when I read about your initiative for local sourced food from Weld County, it reminded me of like a farmer's market vibe to the entire school district.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels that way when we are showcasing one of those products. So when we have the opportunity, corn cobs are a great example. We will purchase and then shuck thousands of ears of corn in the next couple of weeks to showcase on our menu, on our lunch menu, for just a few select days in September.
Right.
Because there's a huge labor investment to shuck all of these ears of corn.
Yeah.
But I love going out to the school. I personally love corn on the cob. It's one of my favorite foods. And I love going out to the school and seeing these kids light up because there's nothing better than the sweet corn in September, just straight from the farm. And so kids, they like the food. And we're teaching them, I hope that we're teaching them a lifelong healthy habit, not just to eat fresh products, but to invest in their local community. So I'll put a shameless plug. September 12th is a Wednesday. It is Colorado Proud School Meal Day. So everything that we serve on our menu that day will be sourced locally from Colorado.
Very nice. And what day is this?
It is Wednesday, September 12th.
Okay. So do you, is it mainly for these showcase days, or do you have local sourced ingredients that are kind of in lunches on a regular basis?
We do. There are a few that I'm particularly proud of. Our bean burritos are pretty popular, especially now that we've switched back to a white tortilla from the whole grain tortilla that we had for years. Just couldn't get that one to stick. Yeah. Our bean burritos are made with pinto beans that are purchased from Leffler Family Farms.
Okay. Is that here in Weld County?
It is. Yes, it is here. Yeah. As well as the green chili that goes on top of that bean burrito is sourced from poblanos grown right here at Tigas Farms, which is, you'd probably, throw a rock to it from here, just 5 miles away.
Right.
And so we bring those products in and we process them. The beans, we will continue to process all year long. We're constantly cooking beans in this place. Because we're hand rolling burritos. Every time we serve burritos, we serve roughly 10,000 burritos, and we roll them all by hand. Wow. So we're just rolling burritos all the time. But the green chilies we'll bring when the harvest comes in. We'll bring them in. We'll roast them, peel them, and then freeze them, and then continue to make green chili throughout the entirety of the school year. And then I mentioned the cucumbers and the peppers. We'll purchase those from Rocky Mountain fresh throughout the school year because they're being grown throughout the school year.
Right.
And then the other things, like with anything farm related, we have to capture it while it's fresh. And so if we're able to process that in a way that we can continue to use it throughout the entirety of the year, we will. We do that with zucchini. I can't tell you what it's in because if a kid listens to this, they won't eat it anymore. But we wash and shred zucchini in the fall, and then we sneak it into all kinds of dishes that kids don't know zucchini's in. Shh,
how about that?
Don't tell them. So we do our best to utilize farm fresh products throughout the year, but we definitely get the bounty in September and hopefully into early October, but it all depends on the weather.
Right.
We've been hoping for a bumper crop of apples from the western slope for years in a row, and years in a row we've had early frosts that have killed off a lot of our apples. But if you've ever had an apple from the western slope, or stone fruit for that matter, if we can get peaches and plums from the western slope, we'll use those just on the salad bar. Kid just goes through and grabs a fresh apple.
Right.
They're delicious.
Yeah, so an early frost will wipe out an entire apple?
Well, it'll wipe out the crop that they are selling to the school district. And so this, again, comes back to a farmer's decision to where they're going to sell their product.
Yeah.
And so if they have a contract with a distributor who's bringing their product to a grocery store, they will almost always fulfill that contract first.
Right,
and our contract will.
Okay.
So last year, I think that we had hoped to purchase $80,000 worth of apples. And in the end, I think we only ended up with about $20,000 worth of apples. So we got some. But apples will last you 3 months once they're in the building. We can make them because you just put them in a cool, dark place and they'll last forever.
Right.
But we only got enough to last a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, in this position as Nutrition Services Director, besides working with local farmers, these initiatives to get local ingredients into schools and make high-quality, community-sourced meals, what would you say has been a huge challenge, something that has been like the dark horse that you've battled through how long have you been in this position?
A year and a half.
Oh, a year and a half. Okay.
Year and a half.
Wow. So 18 months.
Yeah.
What is like a big hurdle that you're either currently trying to get over or you see on the horizon, or?
I have one that I've gotten over that I would share with you.
Okay.
And it's still a work in progress, I guess. We're never quite over it. But I started with the district in the fall of 2014. My previous role as operations coordinator, I was responsible for the bulk of our staff. So the staff that produce the meals and serve them in the school, which is about 160 people. When I started in 2014, our starting wage, which for a nutrition services entry-level employee and a bus monitor for the district, that's on the same schedule. So
Okay.
I told you earlier, our money is separate, but our salary schedules aren't. We're still a part of the district.
Right.
So the starting wage for that entry-level position was $8.67 an hour in 2014.
Wow.
And when I started, I was appalled by that and knew that wasn't livable. That put our employees in position to file the free and reduced lunch application and really in line at the food bank. So staffing has always been a challenge. I won't speak for my counterpart in transportation, but I can say that transportation suffers a similar issue. You might recall as a bus driver.
Right. Yep.
We're constantly understaffed. We never have enough people to go around. And that's really, I don't know how you overcome that when Walmart on 23rd Avenue is hiring for $10 an hour and you're hiring for $8.67 an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the fact that we have moved that up. Our starting wage now is $11.74. Wow, that's a 44% increase in the starting wage in 4 years. We were able to do that. Again, Nutrition Services is paying that out of our revenue funds that we earn from lunch, but the district was able to make that move because we were able to pass that mill levy override last year and bring in additional funding from property tax in Greeley. And so staffing was a huge battle. It's still going to be a battle. It's still not, the dream job that everybody wants, to be a lunch lady.
Right.
But a lot of our staff are making a livable wage now and enjoying a better quality of life. And so I want the staff in this department to love their job. I love my job. We do this because of the kids, and they do it because of the kids, but I don't want them to be martyrs.
Right.
I don't want them
to
at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that staffing and staff salaries and staff wages is ongoing, but it's better. It's better now than it was. For me, the challenge that I get to face this year and possibly in future years, I am also the state chair for our Public Policy and Legislation Committee. So we have a state organization called Colorado School Nutrition Association. There are about 900 members across the entire state, representing probably about 100 school districts. As the state policy chair, I meet with legislators to work on policy that is going to benefit the students in our district. And within the state, we have a policy that, without getting too deep into the weeds, essentially it pays the 40-cent copay for lunch that a reduced student is charged. So I said you can qualify for free or reduced meals. The difference in that really is that if your family is 130% of poverty or below, you get free lunch. If you live between 130 and 185% of poverty, you get reduced lunch, which costs 40 cents. So we have in the past, as a state, part of the general fund coming out of the state budget, the state has paid preschool through 5th grade. Last year, we were able to move that needle all the way up to 8th grade. But still, when you're going from last year in 8th grade to this year as a freshman in high school, you now have to bring 40 cents for that lunch. And what I know is kids can't have a real significant impact on their parents' financial situation. And so when a family is really struggling to get by, charging a student 40 cents for lunch only because they're in high school, because in theory they should be working, that pains me. That kills me a little bit. So that's, I think, community awareness on working with students in poverty is that thing that I will continue to do for the rest of my career. Because there will always be a family in need, whether it's because they've landed on hard financial times or there's been a natural disaster. And we saw that in 2013 with the flood that came down and washed out a large community in Evans. People will experience times of financial hardship. And that's what programs like this program are here for, is to help people. And I care about helping people. And so for me, educating the community on why this program exists, because it's not just a handout. It's not, I joke, it's not just free lunch. It literally is free lunch, but it's not free lunch. It's a program that's put in place so that students can learn and we can raise young people who care about their community. And it is an absolute fact that our bodies and our brains do not function well when we're hungry.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
So not feeding a child because their parents can't, don't, or won't get a job is ludicrous to me. We should be feeding them.
Right.
So that's the battle that I'm going to keep taking. And I do enjoy engaging with legislators. I enjoy educating them about what's going on. I think the media, the media tells a story. And I want our voice to be a part of that story so that they're seeing the true experience that the students and the staff in this district are having.
Right. Well, in addition to poverty, a freshman in high school, much less a senior, being expected to remember 40 cents every day when most of us use nothing but debit and credit cards, digital currency.
Yeah.
There's no way I could have come up with 40 cents a day. I would have gone hungry a lot of days.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of system for that?
We have an online payment system.
Okay.
But the reality, and this is the reality that I try to help my staff understand, the very last bill that any family is ever going to pay is the lunch bill.
Right.
It's because we're going to continue to feed those kids, and we do. This past year, we fed 67,000 meals that were not eligible for reimbursement. 67,000 lunches were served to students in this district that we didn't get paid for. Mm-hmm. We just ate it on those meals because we're not going to turn kids away. That's just the reality. You're dealing with 200 individuals that care very much about these students. And so when a student comes through the line and they owe 40 cents for that lunch, we don't take their lunch away from them. We tell them to go enjoy their lunch. So we have the capacity and the system is in place for parents to put money on that account. But the reality is that a family of 4 living at $41,000 doesn't have money to put on that account.
Right.
Not with the living expenses as they are currently on the Front Range. Yeah. Not with the housing crisis and the daycare situation that we have on the Front Range.
Yeah, and there was an article that I saw that came up on the Google search that they had you briefly in a paragraph, but it was an article about this very same thing where a lot of districts will turn away students, or the thing I couldn't believe is that some school districts will reserve a lower quality meal for those students who can't pay. And I've been a teacher for 5 years in 3 different schools, and I just never thought that would be a thing, but I guess it was. I can't remember what news source here in Colorado covered that story.
I think Chalkbeat.
Okay.
I think there was an article on Chalkbeat that I did an interview for. There's a history to it. There's a notion that if the lunch that I'm serving right now that's, made from scratch, cheese enchiladas with a salad bar and a chocolate milk, if that costs me $1.50 to produce, I can give that student a cold cheese sandwich and an apple for 40 cents and save money on that. Prior to 2010 was when the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act, that's a whole mouthful, but that's the legislation that governs the nutrition requirements for school lunch. Prior to 2010, we didn't have those same mandated nutrient contents. And so a cheese sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich was totally legit to give to a student that didn't have any money, because there was no legislation around what had to be in that meal. You, in fact, can just turn a kid away. But a sympathetic group of human beings whose entire life structure is about feeding kids, they're not going to turn a kid away. Mm-hmm. So a lot of nutrition services departments around the country tried to find low-cost options. After 2010, when the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act came into play, we have to offer certain things. Now, we're required by the USDA to offer nutrient content, the amount of protein, the amount of vegetables, the amount of fresh fruit and vegetables. And so it no longer makes sense to give that student a cheese sandwich, in addition to the fact that it's cruel.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, stories like the one that Chalkbeat covered, there was one just last night. My finance specialist had texted me. There are bad examples, like there are in any industry. I believe the last night's story, there's some embezzlement scheme that happened in Connecticut. 2 lunch ladies stole $500,000. Google that one when you get home.
Dang.
So, just like in any industry, there can be somebody doing something and it gets covered and then everybody believes that lunch ladies are mean.
Right.
But school nutrition professionals, which are the people that I employ in Greeley, that I am a part of, care very much about the quality of the food that they're serving students.
Right. I think there was a PSA done mid-'90s. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley. I couldn't help but the first time you said lunch lady earlier in this interview, I couldn't help but to remember Lunch Lady Land.
You might have to put a little clip of it in there because
right.
Yeah, nationally we're discouraged from using the word lunch lady.
Right. Okay. I was curious.
Yeah. No, we are. Our national association discourages the use of that phrase. And I want to be fair to the lunch dudes out there. There are some lunch dudes. We've got some lunch dudes here. I use it with affection. And just like I feel like I have in my lifetime taken the word queer back from people who use it in an offensive way,
right.
I also believe that we should take back the lunch lady terminology because
Own it.
I don't think that there's anybody. I don't want to offend bus drivers and school administrators and teachers, but I genuinely don't think that there is anybody in a school building that has the same opportunity to impact the lives of students that a lunch lady has. In an elementary school, they're the only people in the building that see every single student every single day that's in that building. Classroom teachers can't.
Right.
Principals can't. Bus drivers can't.
30 maybe.
You see when you're in a lunchroom, you see every single student, whether they brought their lunch from home or not. You're seeing them. They know all their names. They know all their siblings. They know all their favorite activities and books and classes. School nutrition professionals care so much about the quality of life of the students, not just what they're eating, but how all of that rolls out once they get home. And so I think we take back the lunch lady and turn it around, because I personally, when I started in this industry that I hadn't really given 2 seconds thought of before I started in it, all I could think of was Doris the lunch lady from The Simpsons.
Okay.
You know, where she stands over the giant vat of like children's soup with the ash that's 2 inches long. That's who I think of. So we're gonna take that one back.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Sorry, got off track.
No. If you think about it, what you were saying about their very important figure, arguably maybe the most, being a teacher. I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay.
But if a student is not able to pay adequate attention, if they don't feel good, if they haven't had the right meal, lunch ladies and lunch dudes are paving the way for students to be present at school. You know, I've had students that showed up to school, they spent 8 hours there, but they might as well have not left home because they didn't retain anything. And if they didn't eat, or if they didn't know where the next meal was coming from when they got home that night, much less over the weekend, lunch ladies and lunch dudes can open the door to school and just set a different vibe and make kids feel good, not only emotionally by talking to them, knowing them, joking with them, but physically. And I think nourishment and good food at school is a severely underrated aspect of behavior and belonging and enjoyment from school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you're really getting at is the sense of pride that you and I were talking about earlier. When you go to the farmer's market and you feel connected to the community, food is basic. It's a basic need, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I can tell by looking at you that you care about what you put in your body. If the 67% of the students in our district don't necessarily know where their next meal is coming from or what that meal is going to contain, what they associate with food is shame. And for us to be able to turn that around and turn the shame of not having anything in your refrigerator at home into pride, into participating in a local community that cares about food, then we've changed how that student is going to relate to food for the rest of their lives. And you're going to relate to food for the rest of your life. That's a given.
We all
in
love
order
food.
To stay alive, you got to have food. And so to feel shame when you think about food is devastating for a child.
Right.
So I think you're right. I think that those lunch ladies and lunch dudes are, they're taking it back. They're taking back their title.
Yeah. Even more so, if you are a child come from an affluent family, you've never not had an abundance of food, you've never worried about where the next meal is coming from, it's never even been a thought. A good meal in the morning or at lunch served by someone who knows you and cares for you makes a difference. It's huge.
Yeah.
And without that, you could have eaten perfectly the night before, but if you haven't had breakfast and you didn't have a good lunch and you think that the school food is gross and that the lunch ladies and lunch dudes are scary, that lunchtime at school is going to do nothing positive for you for the second half of your day.
Yeah.
So
true.
Looks like we are a tad bit over time here, so I'm gonna I'm gonna close out here with one more question. What is, now that you've come back to Northern Colorado from Seattle, originally from Denver, what part of Denver?
Metro Denver. Let's call it Colorado Boulevard, South Colorado Boulevard, University Hills area.
Okay. Since being back in Northern Colorado, in your current role and your lifestyle in Fort Collins, what is something that resonates with you and that you enjoy about the community of Northern Colorado and working here and being here?
I will say for me, and this ties it back, but the Greeley Unexpected campaign that Nutrition Services is being featured in presently, but the entire Greeley Unexpected campaign, it's almost a joke inside our household because there's so many things about Greeley that are unexpected. I live in Fort Collins, but I spend my waking hours here in Greeley, and I love it here. I absolutely love it. I have found people in this community that have become lifelong best friends. And so for me, creating that sense of community has been absolutely life-changing. I never even thought it was possible. I thought I would just drive over here and come to work. But some days I just want to stay here.
Right.
I love it. And so there is a sense of making a difference in Greeley that I truly respect. People care about one another in Greeley. I'm not saying people don't care about each other in Fort Collins. I wouldn't know. I'm never awake over there.
Right.
They certainly do. And we do have a unique position, Amy and I. As the executive director, as the CEO of the Food Bank for Larimer County, her organization is responsible for feeding close to 40,000 individuals every month, providing them meals at home. Yeah. Whereas my organization is responsible for making sure that 23,000 students have access to breakfast, lunch, and supper. So that sense of community and wanting our community to be a better place, I knew I had that inside me. I had no idea that Greeley as a whole had that. And so that's been a really pleasant surprise. Yeah.
The work you two are doing combined, feeding 60-some thousand people every day, it's awesome.
Exhausting.
But it's amazing and appreciated.
Yeah, and it's fun. And, more than anything, I love the opportunities that I have. I feel very blessed and very grateful to be in this position, to try to improve myself around just with the experience that I have every day with other people. I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I mean, I know where it comes from, but unfortunately, I feel like Greeley sometimes gets a bad rap in Colorado. When you tell someone where you live or what you're doing in Greeley, oh, Greeley. There's kind of this vibe, this tone of voice that follows when people
for sure
hear you're from Greeley.
And 5 years ago, I was guilty of it. 5 years ago, I was, it's been more than 5 now, but 7 years ago when I worked for the Weld Food Bank, I was probably the first person to make a derogatory comment. Now, in my defense, it is right across the street from the JBS plant, so it's not a pleasant smell.
Okay.
To coming and going.
Right.
But I was absolutely a part of conversations about why would you want to live in Greeley? What's Greeley doing?
Right. I still get asked that.
Yeah. Greeley's doing some pretty amazing things. Northern Colorado is doing some amazing things.
Right.
I do hope that in the future we can start to bridge the divide between Fort Collins and Greeley because there's a pretty significant disparity there. I joke that, and it's not funny, that I don't see brown people when I go home. There certainly are people of color in Fort Collins, but you don't see them very often. And I do believe that there are some significant racial segregation issues that we need to tackle in Fort Collins, as well as in Greeley. It's just that the work that I do in Greeley, I encounter people of color more often than I would in another field.
Right.
So I'm hoping that I'm excited about the work that you're doing because I do think of it as NoCo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe that's just because I go back and forth every day. But I'm excited to see the community of NoCo continue to grow because there's a lot that Fort Collins has to teach Greeley, and there is a lot of humility and grassroots efforts that Fort Collins has to learn from Greeley.
I've noticed the NoCo badge is starting to come up on businesses.
Yeah.
It's being used. There's a NoCo exclusive newspaper, the Coloradoan.
Yeah.
They brand themselves as the NoCo newspaper. Yeah. And I've lived here for 4 years, and it's something I've definitely seen changing in real time.
Yeah.
This idea of a community for NoCo, and I hope this podcast can be just a piece of that.
I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah. So if people are looking to link up with you on social media or email you, phone number, what's the best way to get a hold of you if they have any questions or?
My email address and my office number are on the Greeley-Evans School District 6 Nutrition Services website.
Okay.
That is probably the best.
People hang out there a lot, I bet.
Probably not. Yeah. Also, we have the Nutrition Services Department has a really substantial force on social media.
Okay.
Our department alone has 6 Facebook pages now.
Wow.
So we're out there. If you type in Greeley Evans Nutrition Services to a browser, you'll find me.
Okay.
It'll get to me.
Yeah.
Just like you did.
Right, yeah. I
easy.
found you through Greeley Unexpected, the magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, and we plugged it earlier, but Legos and Bathroom Bills, check that video out. And if you desire to reach out to Danielle Bock. Danielle Bock.
Like the beer.
Oh, yeah, Shiner Bock.
Yeah.
Do you like Shiner Bock?
I do, and in fact,
Okay.
I have a niece named Amber Bock.
Oh,
I hope my brother doesn't listen to this podcast.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
I want to say a very special thanks to Russell Isaac Long, the man responsible for writing and mixing all the music tracks used here at the More You Know Co. If you'd like to access any content in addition to these episodes, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The More You Know Co. In addition, if you have ideas for people you'd like to hear on the show, hit us up at the email themoreyouKnowco@gmail.com. Until next time, peace!